Hey guys, welcome back to Chris and Retro. Man, a lot of change talk. Politics have been a predominant part of our headlines. A lot of arguing, a lot of stuff going on, and I think that for the most part, the one area we would agree is everybody's looking for change. Some seeming to be a little bit short term, some a little long term. Really doesn't matter, but I think that generally speaking, as a population here in the United States, we can agree that generally people are looking for change. And there's a lot of background behind that. And tonight, what I want to do is explore some of that a little bit and offer some suggestions on how we can deal with it, especially those of us that are struggling with mental health and addiction issues. So with that, let's talk about it. So guys, we're going to talk a little bit about change tonight and how to make that happen. I don't know about you. I mean, I have a political opinion. I have many political opinions. Very rarely am I 100% on one side or the other. It's not because I'm not a decision maker. I absolutely am somebody that makes decisions and stands by what I believe in. I've never really been a herd follower. And I find a lot of herd following going on. I'll give you a couple examples recently. Of course, I find it tremendously annoying, the amount of screaming that's going on by the liberal side of things relative to pretty much anything that's going on. If there's something going on, we ran into this 4 years ago as well, for the previous 4 years. And there's one individual that if he's running or holding office at any point in time, we're going to hear a lot of flipping out because all of their the social, whatever you stand for today, for your social inconvenience or your social preference, has to be something that we all have to collectively buy into, or it's a big screaming match. And so the liberal side of things, I see genuinely be the ones that throw absolute temper tantrums when things aren't going 100% their way. And it always seems to align directly with either a Christian ideology or our current president. And in that, I think it'd be hard pressed to find that not to be true, or anybody have that opinion, have an opinion differently, regardless of what position you're in. The other side of this whole thing too is, the conservative side of things looking for change as well. So you've got one side looking for change and seeming to have a fit over every little thing. And then you got the other side saying change, and they're going to end every single thing for the other party. And there really doesn't seem to be any middle ground. And regardless of who we have as president, we've run into a stalemate because both sides are taking the same position. And when they want their way, they use the power of the office to drive it down people's throats, regardless of which side of the fence you're on. I personally don't believe that's not a we the people position. The challenge is for us as people is to not allow ourselves to be divided. Now, I find myself in this quandary, and that I am opinionated, and I see a lot of nonsense out there, and usually it's typically the thing that will really set me off is illogical comments or what I consider to be hypocritical based on previous positions. So for one example would be, I hear I've heard some recent fussing about the fact that we're going to lose our heritage and our history as a nation based on some of the things the current president and his administration is doing, which I find very short-sighted considering the amount of monuments and base change names and mountain changes and everything else that were changed based on erasing our history, good and bad. I'm not suggesting that some of that history is noble by any means, but it's certainly, as we've heard time and time again, we can't forget history. It'll repeat itself. So some of these monuments out there that we went through so much effort to make sure they were gone for, in the last presidency, now the allegation is that we're getting rid of our history with the new presidency and the things that are going on, which it just, that double-sided way of looking at things that says, if I do it, it's okay. If you do it, it's not okay, drives me bananas. The other thing that drives me crazy too is that the notion that if you've got a minority type position in life, and I'm not talking about skin color, but I'm really speaking primarily around sexual orientation. If you've got a primary position that believes that you are a male or female, you're not a non-biological version of yourself. If you're a male, you think you're female. If you're female, you think you're a male. Or if you have some kind of sexual preference related to your dating life and your sexual practices, that should be fine for you to do whatever you want to do, but it shouldn't be the obligation of every single person around you that thinks differently to adapt and accommodate you and what you want, just as though it shouldn't be their life to accommodate me. We really should just allow ourselves as individuals to live our life and present our voice and our opinion as we see fit and be allowed to do that. We are definitely being divided still. I was pretty positive about this administration coming in. I felt like a lot of change, a lot of concerns I had about where our country was going was going to end immediately. I can tell you I've recently had pause in two real areas. I mean, just what I consider to be arbitrary guts of the government and people doing research. I have trouble with that big time, because I saw an example recently where 900 plus research projects in the National Institute of Health were ended because of transgenetic research. And if I'm saying that correctly, that's transgenetic research. But the AI software that was pulling up a way to get rid of all this DEI stuff thought that was transgender, and arbitrarily ended funding and 900 plus projects because of work done in genetic sequencing and the work that's around gene research and that type of thing. All because that word appeared to be transgender, and it absolutely is not transgender, and it has nothing to do with it. It has to do with some very important research and science based on our health and predictive indicators and things like that. And it's, really the new frontier in terms of a lot of ways that we solve problems medically. So, and also understand ourselves as human beings. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with just the cut and paste way of dealing with things. I also have a second issue that's come up recently that's I really find as a no-go, and this is really irritating me. This Jeffrey Epstein crap, and the fact that there seems to be some protection around this, and the opinion has changed dramatically from what we thought as voting population was going to happen with this presidency, has done an about face, and quite honestly, we're being lied to. So until that's dealt with, none of these other victories really mean squat to me, because we're talking about children and women being abused by a bunch of high-powered people, and we're not considering that the most priority as a nation over other things. And so it's something, if the information's there, it should be disclosed, and mass arrests should start taking place. But we do seem to do this over and over again when it comes to children and people that are sexually assaulted in any way, shape, or form. Any of those things, it just becomes hidden. And I really find that disgusting. So I don't care who's in office. If you're complicit in it by not disclosing the information and knowing the information and not pressing charges, then you're absolutely not doing your job. And I believe that Pam Bondi should step down or be terminated immediately based on her public allegations, her absolute lies that she's now coming out with related to course correcting that and that type of thing. So that's my opinion on that. I have very strong opinions about certain things, but I do see that both sides are saying they want change. Now, this is a change that I would like to see. I think Bondi, based on her lies, has lost all credibility with me, and I think the change should be that she should step down. So the change that I'm trying to institute is have my voice heard about her. She should step down. I also think that these protests that are going on all the time. Now, I was talking to my fiance the other day. There was another protest just down the street from us, and we're driving down through, and I start pointing at all the guys. I wasn't pointing at the girls, I'm pointing at the guys. I'm like, that guy, that guy, that guy. And she's like, what are you pointing at? And she didn't ask that, but she was kind of puzzled by what I was doing. I said, those guys, they will not stand alone for what they believe in. They're a herd mentality. They need to have this crowd around them with their cardboard boxes to actually stand for what they believe in. And they got to scream and holler and throw their fit. And that's supposedly be an agent of change. It is not. You're a number of noise. I think that change comes from a one-on-one interaction. I find that most of them would not confront you face-to-face if they're on their own. They might have a reasonable conversation with you, many of them. I think most of them will. However, this rage and outrage and just screaming and accusations and all that stuff doesn't happen one-on-one. And I know that firsthand based on some of them. It also happens on social media where there isn't a face-to-face account and there's no accountability for anything you call somebody. I've had a former assistant district attorney in a county I was prosecuted in go on my social media and basically call me an idiot. And I said, please enlighten me about your unbiased work as a assistant district attorney. Tell me about how stupid I am, and let's hear about your bias in a public office that has to deal with this type of thing. And so he said, I have no idea what you're talking about. I said, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because you know exactly where you met me. And so these are things where I feel like people just lose their sense of, wait, he's crying about a certain circumstance, didn't like my opinion on something, and that's his version of like change, trying to cause change. At least that's what he'll hide behind. And really all it boils down to, he's just angry. He's just upset that he's not getting his way, and this free for all that he believes in is not going on. So this is a lot of, I'm kind of going down different rabbit trails here, but let's get back to the point here. The point is change. All sides are looking for change. The previous administration had a certain policies and certain things in place, and that was change that they were setting up based on their perception about disadvantages of certain populations that they represented. And they went way too far the other way by putting, absolutely unqualified health direct secretaries in place, just nonsense after nonsense, cover up after cover up, all to make sure that their agenda was pushed through, and they did weaponize the justice system. Now, what's funny, not funny, is that the conservative Republican Party was alleging all these things and has turned right around in this administration doing the exact same thing. They're weaponizing the DOJ as well. So how do we make change? I think change happens with people talking to people. I've said often, and you'll see it in my writing, you'll see it in post, change lives, and I believe that wholeheartedly. And in fact, a previous podcast we did called 100 Proof Living, I talked about that on there a lot, and I'd actually end the broadcast session with that comment, change lives, and I really believe that's true. So if we want change, it's going to come down to two human beings being fellow travelers, regardless of what your base of belief systems are, respecting each other as human beings and where you stand for, and coming to a reasonable conclusion on how to move forward. As long as we base our lives on whatever the media manipulates us to believe is happening or not happening, they're not manipulating us to believe a certain thing. They're creating a fear-based environment for us to see things a certain way. And in that way, they're whipping up this environment that also is being driven by very high-powered people. United we stand, divided we fall. What better way to beat this country than to let us defeat ourselves? I'm far less afraid of foreign adversaries blowing up our country than I am about what's being done with us slowly and methodically. You look at China and how China is attacking us. China is not attacking us as a war battlefront. That's really not their way. However, they're buying a lot of land around military bases. They're forming financial real estate investment groups that come into cities like Rochester, New York, and buy 500 properties at a time and have no intention of flipping them, but now they own all these properties as Chinese private investors, which there's no such thing. They're doing it methodically from within, and we're not paying attention to that because we're so busy screaming about sexual orientation. We're so busy screaming about, the Biden administration. We're so busy screaming about Trump that we're taking our eye off the ball and realizing that our future is dependent upon us being united and not divided. Now, I do have an opinion. When people come at me 100% with their attitude problems, I will meet force with force on that. I'm not interested in being disrespected by somebody that I don't agree with their opinion. I have a lot of people in my life that we are completely opposed to. In fact, somebody I'm close with in Park City, Utah. I do not agree on just about anything political, but he's, to me, one of the greatest people I know. He's a fellow traveler in this journey, and he's somebody I have so much respect and love for, and I'd do anything for him. But from a political perspective, we do not agree at all. And in some of my opinions, he feels are misinformed and naive. And I find him to be a tremendously intelligent person, so I pause and listen to what he has to say. I still don't agree with a lot of it, but because of who he is, I respect his opinion. He has the exact same opinion as many of these people I see marching. They're just screaming uninformed, but they're doing it because they heard something in the news, and that's got them all whipped up. Change does not happen by screaming and flipping out. It just doesn't. All these protests and everything else aren't doing squat. They're making people feel like they're doing something so that they all can say I marched and get themselves on social media that I showed up to this freaking No Kings crap. And it didn't do anything, and it's not going to do anything. Why? Because it goes away, because the stamina is not there, and nobody knows what the message was. I don't. There was protests here 5 weekends or so out of probably, 8. And every single one of them had a different set of banners out there. I'm not sure what any of them were for. The No Kings one was probably the closest I'd seen to anything that made any sense about what they were even protesting. And I'm still not sure what that was, except for the fact they're opposed to our current president and what they believe to be his arbitrary decision-making without anybody else supporting it. So that stuff doesn't work. I think that we boil down to the fact that we've got both of us, both sides or all sides, there's probably more than one, more than two, I mean. We have aspirations for a future. We have aspirations for our families. All of us see it, how that might look differently, and we all have different needs for our families. You can take a collective of 5 within the liberal side, and you'll find 5 different needs for their future. You take 5 from the conservative side, you'll find 5 different needs for their future. No multiple groups of family, certainly not a whole party worth of family, has the exact same needs. I can tell you there's many people that have the same ideology I do, both spiritually and politically and professionally and all that other stuff. And I can take 10 of them, and all of our households have different needs. So we need to represent ourselves and what we're standing for, make our very best way, and respect our fellow man, but be willing to have those straight on conversations with us, because what happens is we can get nasty when the face-to-face is removed. We start typing stuff in social media. It's very safe. You can be as nasty as you want because you're not checked at all, because somebody's not in your face. Same thing with it following these political programs. You're now speaking on a loftier thing, basically degrading a person across from you, thinking that loftier thing should mean that person shouldn't get upset enough to come after you personally. I think that stuff all gets diffused when you actually, if you really believe it that much, you'd be willing to sit down and have a conversation with somebody, because if you want change, that means you're going to have to change somebody that believes something opposite of you. And they have a right to say what they believe without any fear of repercussion. Change happens within individuals talking to individuals. Tonight's video was really boiled down to that. It was not really to express my opinion on politics. I do have it, and maybe some of it bled through in what I was saying here. I am disgusted by the screaming and hollering, and everything this president does is wrong. I think it's pathetic, and it's ill-advised, and it's wrong. It's just pathetic, and it's very self-righteous because of the things the other administration did that was exactly like what he's doing. But I'm also pretty disgusted with what I'm seeing on this side of it as well. This Epstein stuff has just got me to the point. I'm like, man, if you're not going to deal with the kid stuff, or you're going to deal with this, the abuse of women, then what else are you lying to me about? So we'll see how it all plays out. I'm not serving this man, and I'm not serving any man. I'm serving a king. I'm serving my family. And, if you're a reasonable conversationalist and you don't agree with what I agree with, I can get along with you just fine. We can have a conversation, and we can also separate, not actually agreeing on anything. But what is nice is that many of the people that don't agree with me and that I don't agree with as well, I would fight for them all along the way to make sure that they had a better day, regardless of what I believe, because that's where the work starts. My opinion doesn't make any work happen, and theirs doesn't either. Hope this is useful tonight, guys, and challenge yourself. Maybe I haven't given you any information. Maybe I've just been pointing out observations tonight, but challenge yourself. How are you handling things that you want to see done? Are you just getting on social media and fussing with somebody that had a strong opinion? Are you just getting in a debate to see who can pee farther? Those pissing matches aren't doing jack. They're not helping either side, and all they're doing is flexing your pride. That's not change. That's being a big mouth. Guys, I hope everything goes well for you. Hope you have a great week. I'll try to tune back on here with another couple of videos this week. Between now and the next time we talk, I'm going to do everything I can to stay out of trouble. I hope you do too.